Welcome to this first Train the Trainer session on system innovation in the agri-food sector. We're going to have two online training sessions this week. The first one is going to be today from 9 to 12, and the second one is going to be on Thursday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I'm going to let the word to Hus, who is the consortium leader of GRAPPA project. Is going to explain a little bit what the GRAPPA project is and why we are here all together today. Thank you.
Good morning from my side. Thank you very much, Cecile, for this brief introduction. So yes, this first session, Train the Trainer session on system innovation is organized within the scope of the GRAPPA project. And the GRAPPA project is a Euroclusters project, which has been started in October of last year, in which we are going to enroll a series of implementation measures and support measures for the companies active in the agri-food sector or working on side streams and co-products from the agri-food sector. So the main goal of the GRAPPA project is that we will focus on upcycling food ingredients and products towards food ingredients and products, feed products, but as well cosmetics and other types of products. We want to come to the valorization of biomass and side streams that are generated within our sector, and the main focus is to support the SMEs within our sector to become more competitive, have an advanced technology implementation, be more greener and digital. There will be support actions towards commercialization, to uptake of new innovative products, processes, and services. If we overlook the sector, then we see there are some specific challenges when it comes to environmental impacts and resource inefficiencies, which we want to improve. On top of that, there are the shifting consumer preferences and the regulatory hurdles that we see today. Within this GRAPPA project, we have identified some specific objectives. First of all, and the main point of the project is to support companies financially with financial support to third parties, identify innovation opportunities, and define the collective intelligence. I hear some background noises. Can you please mute everybody who's not speaking? Then we will focus on capacity building, networking SMEs, supporting and boosting access to global value chains, share knowledge and do innovation diffusion. And we have specific focus on systemic innovation. The project partners are 6 clusters from Europe, which you see here on the map, and they're all embedded in the I4CE Smart Specialization Partnership. I4CE is a meta cluster, which is focusing on place-based innovation. All our members are here on the map, and it's important to say that this project and this initiative and this training has been supported and has been initiated within this network of clusters. Going back to GRAPPA project, we have a specific methodology which is focusing on 3 pillars. The first pillar is the learn and connect pillar. Then we go to demonstrate and commercialization, and then the scale up. So it's the lifetime of innovations through starting from the idea, going to the market. In the learn and connect phase, we focus, or we have a specific system thinking approach, how to optimize processes, reduce waste, and boost sustainability. And we look at this from a systemic point of view, not only in the company, but how is this embedded in the entire sector innovation ecosystem. Second pillar, the focus on demonstration and commercialization. How can we accelerate the innovation? So there it comes to direct support towards companies and clusters and innovation intermediates within the ecosystem. The last phase is the scale up. How can we come up to wider industry adoption? This is going settling an food upcycling strategy for the longer term. Within Learn and Connect, we have the system thinking methodological approach in which we want to stimulate systemic innovation thinking within our sector. This first train-the-trainer activity is one activity under this initiative. Then we have knowledge acquisition and capacity building, in which we organize trainings. We have a skills hub on the I4CE webpage, where all the materials, all the results of this project will be permanently available for companies, for clusters, for other intermediary organizations. There's the support to internationalization of SMEs. And we will be building strategic collaborations and networks within the regions. And here we focus within the project to set up regional agri-food biomass upcycling networks, what we call RABOONs, in 6 regions in Europe. And we will be organizing the European Food Biomass and Bioeconomy Summit. Second pillar, main focus there is the innovation lump sum scheme. So the innovation support, directly financial support to SMEs within Europe. And we will be supporting the expanding towards automotive to regions outside Europe and global markets. In the third pillar, we will following up the SMEs we support financially, and we will come up with a strategy on the long term on food upcycling. This strategy will be further enrolled then within the I4CE network. Summing up, we have the direct funding, and this is important to mention to all the clusters in order to inform their SME members and towards all the companies here around today. We have 2 million budget here, which will be distributed over at the minimum 35 SMEs in Europe. They will receive a max of 60,000 euros for an innovation project. There will be a call for those projects, which will open in spring this year in March, and there will be 2 cutoff days, one in May and one in October of this year. The project will last for 1 year. Important to mention, the companies themselves will have to come up with a co-fund of 50% of the budget of the project. That's the main work right now this year within the project. There's the knowledge and skill development. We will organize more than 30 training sessions. There's the networking access. So we have the regional agri-food biomass upcycling networks we will establish, and we will have it in 6 regions. The global market entry, we aim to go for a support of at least 100 companies, which get support in the internationalization activities. And we have the roadmap we wish to develop by the end of the year, which will be further embedded within the strategy of I4CE. In spring 2027, there will be the European Food Biomass and Bioeconomy Summit. It will be the 2nd time we organize this. The first time has been organized by I4CE within the scope of the Be Resilient project. Now we will organize it in the scope of the CRAPA project. And so we are here today for the first action, the real action in the project. This train the trainers on system innovation in the agri-food sector. I want to stress here that this training today is a training to learn how to deal with systemic innovation. And we have a speaker and a trainer working at ILVO in Flanders, and they developed a tool on how to assess the readiness level of your, from a systemic point of view, of your innovation within your company, your organization you wish to establish. So this is really a training on how to use a tool, a hands-on tool to assess, is my innovation ready from a systemic point of view? I will stop here. In case you would like to get to know more about the CRAPA project, you can always contact me. But we are here today to get this real training, and our trainer today is Lisa. So Lisa, I will leave the word to you right now, and you will take us along this morning in the first part of the training session, and then on Thursday afternoon, we will have the second part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hus. I'm very happy to be here. Good morning to all of you. So systemic innovation, indeed. It is something the EU, European Commission, I mean, many companies, we are all looking to innovate. We have most innovations seem to be needing more than one dimensions and seem to be multi-dimensional problems that need to be solved. So we want to monitor them, and that's always been very, very challenging. So we see that there's been a constant search for good ways to monitor and evaluate our innovations, so that we can, of course, invest in the right ones. And this indeed has been challenging for the EU. So we have been trying within the Zero project to find a solution for that. We've tested it in the Zero project and have fine-tuned it afterwards and made this tool into something that is publicly accessible. And we are very happy that we can share it here today with you all. We will indeed split it up over 2 days because it's quite a lot. Today we will be starting with a little bit of definitions, a bit of background on systems thinking as well, just to make sure that not too much, it's not a theoretical course, but just so that you are, that you can follow, that even if you haven't heard of systemic innovation before or not too much, that you can still follow the logic of what we're trying to do here. Also the history a bit of how the tool was developed. And I will give you away the first explanation of how the SIRL framework was set up and how the tool is working. You will be using it yourselves. You will be working in breakout groups to also apply it, because it works best if you just try it yourselves. And then next week we will be driving further, and we will actually adapt the tool to your projects or your solutions that you are working on. I'm aware that it's not your real projects, so it will be for the sake of the exercise that you will be put in little groups, but we'll come back to that. Innovation. What is innovation? It's the use of new ideas, products, methods where they have not been used before. So it's a very broad definition. That's cool to have this broad definition, but how do we then measure whether this ideas, products, or methods, are we using them in an innovative way, or is it working? Is society actually ready to adopt them? Yes, no. Often it's not, and then why not? And how can we get there? I guess those are the big questions out there. So we want to measure the progress of these, the evolution of these innovations. And I guess most of you have heard of TRLs, the technological readiness levels. I can't see any, oh yeah, I can see you in small. Is there anyone who has never heard of a technological readiness level? I guess most of you have heard of them. But have you also heard of the sociological readiness levels, the marketing readiness levels, organizational readiness levels, the legal readiness levels, and there might be even more. Maybe some of you have heard of readiness levels that are not yet in the list. So it started with the technological ones, the 9-step scale that we all know and is used very widely, but quickly, actually, European Commission and many people noticed that this is not enough, that this is only technology, and innovation is not only about implementing a new technology. So, but that is where it started. It started with NASA actually implementing this technological readiness level. Very important for them. It was a matter of life or death situation for them to have a good assessment of whether the technology that they had developed at some point was actually ready to be applied, not only in a testing environment, but in a real life environment. And that started in the 70s. Very useful. It was initially a 7-step ladder, and later on it was developed into a 9-step ladder. The European Commission picked it up, thought, okay, this is a useful way to innovate. If NASA is using it, then it must be good. So let's try this for all the innovations that we are funding, and then to make sure that we are investing in the right ones. But they quickly noticed indeed that this one-dimensional approach is not enough, that it was too limiting, and that they also needed to, it was nice to have new technology, but if it was legally not possible to implement it, or if there was no business case for it, then yeah, that's a very nice technology, but it will never have impact, right? So it's split up and you see all these other readiness level scales that were also developed. So then you get a lot of readiness level scales, all 9-step scales, very described in a lot of detail, what each step means. But then it becomes very, very complicated to actually monitor and track those and to see, okay, so I'm quite well developed in the sociological one, but the organizational one is lagging behind. And how are you then monitoring this whole thing? It becomes quite complicated. And which ones are relevant for your innovation? That's also a difficult question. So actually, this really needed more of a structure of a framework to keep the overview. And that is what we try to do with our tool, which we have given the very sexy title of Systemic Innovation Readiness Level Assessment Tool. But that is what it is. So that's the SIRL in short. And we have been looking like, do we need to give this another name? But in the end, it is just that. It is a way of measuring innovations in a systemic way. And it seems to be very useful for many different people to have this multidimensional solution. So that was developed the first time within the Zero project. It was tested there by 9 innovations during a period of 3 years, but it can be used in different time frames as well. That's no problem. And we adapted it further and further to make it suitable for practical applications, and also turned it then in an online a tool to make sure that it was easy to use for many people. So we come to, as you might have noticed, my titles above of how the SIRL tool has come to life. We started with emergence. We moved on to development. Now it was calibrated in the Zero project, and then finally the tool is blooming as we speak now, because it is being used in many different contexts in other projects, and it is repeating itself on its own. And those stages will come back in the tool itself. So that's why I wanted to point them out. So okay, what does this tool do? Basically, it's very simple. It just there's many different dimensions on which we can measure innovations. We integrate them in one tool. That's really nice. But yeah, why actually? Why are you doing that? Well, there we are coming to the systems innovations. We say that the more that a societal challenge is a systemic challenge, the more that actually you need different dimensions. It's the multidimensional problem. You require a multidimensional solution. And in order to keep track of them, we say that if you look at each dimension in isolation, then you will be making mistakes. Then you will be missing out on things, and then you might be innovating in a not very efficient way. So you need to look at the innovation dimensions as a whole package. And very nice, this is not an idea that this was developed by some other scientists, by Sartas et al., made this very nice visual of this. Well, we made it here in a more abstract form, where you say, okay, if you have this barrel, and different staves of this barrel are the different innovation dimensions. And if you are investing water in that barrel, you're putting water in the barrel, well, your weakest dimension will be where it's leaking, right? So it's in this example, you see that the business dimension is underdeveloped versus the other dimensions. Well, then you first need to work on the business level, or else all the money that and the efforts that you're putting into design innovation, it's just a waste of time, because you're losing that because the weakest dimension is not developed. And we always seem to be, as humans, we tend to ignore these kind of problems. We want to work on things that we know how to solve. And if the business one is different to solve, then we might, we would prefer to ignore that and keep on working on the other ones. But doing that makes no sense from a societal point of view, because you're not going to get the impact that you want. So you really have to make sure that you know what your weakest dimension is, and also then act upon it. And the SIRL tool really helps you to identify where you are in each of these dimensions, and then it triggers you to work on the weakest one. Yeah, so we will also be working on some of your case studies. I didn't receive them beforehand, so it will be a surprise for me which ones it will be. We'll get back to that. But first, systems innovation, systemic innovation. How what is that? Some short background on that. So it's important to know, first of all, that if we talk about systemic things, that the world is a continuum. So although to study it, you might need to draw some boundaries, in reality, there are none, right? So you will decide, you will have an innovation or a challenge that you are working on. Let's say the challenge is, I know people are eating too much meat. The challenge might be we have this amount of biomass available somewhere, and we want to use it in a more efficient way than we're using today. You decide what yours based on your challenge. You will have to draw boundaries and identify your system and make sure that you have some limits to it, just to make it more easy for you to study it. But it's also important that from the perspective of that you know that you can scale it later on. So you might need to make a boundary and say, okay, this is what we're focusing on, but you have to make sure that you see it within the bigger picture. Don't make it too small, this boundary. If your societal problem that you're solving is too small, let's say, if it's too narrow, then it will be hard to replicate it and to really have impact. If you have a too broad scope, then you might actually not be solving anything at all, because it might be overwhelming. So it's good to have some balance there. And that's something that we try to visualize here a bit. Also to make the SIRL tool useful, actually, that is important. So here I'm referring a bit Donatella Meadows' slides. Wait, I'm actually noticing that I had some other slides in there that I am not seeing. Just one little second. This is not my final version because I added some slides here. In the testing, I got some other slides. Up until now, it was all the same, so you didn't miss anything just yet. Give me just 1 second if it's opening. I have it open here. Gotta stop. Just let's check if this is the right version. Yeah, here we are. That's better. Can you still see my, now I have to find my mouse again.
It's not in presenter mode yet, Lisa.
No. Now it is?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So system thinking. It is a way to look at the world. It is a paradigm. And it is based on this holistic reasoning, like looking at things as a being that is related. So that's why all these lines. This is an example of a visual of family farming, and so you cannot just look at one farm or at one farmer in isolation. You have to look at this farmer within his network of other farmers, and within his network of suppliers, and his network of customers, and you have to look at this. And his people that are delivering services to him. So you have to look at all these relationships, and these relationships are constantly changing. And as one relationship changes within that system, all the other ones will also change because they're all interconnected. And that makes it extremely complicated, of course, to study this system. It's important that this systems thinking, it's often opposed to more analytical systems, where you look at a system by breaking it down into constituent parts. Then you would take the farmer and you would look only at the farmer and how his farm is operated. And then you would see things happening. You would try to say, okay, this farm has a certain size, has a certain production output. You would describe it based on some characteristics, and based on that you would have this farm. But that's too limited. If you really want to understand how this farm is operating within the system, then you need to really understand the relationships. And that's what systems thinking tries to make you do, to look at the world as by understanding the different relationships, interconnections, and interdependencies. It's of course much more complicated, but you will also get much more interesting outputs. So that is the basic idea of systems thinking. bringing us to the boundaries. Indeed, if you look at it that way, then everything is part of the system. Indeed, that's too much. You cannot study it like that. So you are solving a particular challenge in your projects. Based on that, you will put on a certain lens and you will draw a certain line. But be aware of the fact that you're drawing this line, and at all times you might have to step out of it and you might have to change that. So it's very important to be aware of that. But for the sake of being able to work, you do have to draw the lines. There's many different tools in the systems researchers toolbox. Just a couple of them I pointed out here. How do you approach it? How do you do this, studying these different relationships? You always start by identifying your system and setting your boundaries. Then you try to understand the system and how the parts are interconnected and arranged. And to do that, we use different kind of tools in the different steps of these projects. So sometimes you might want to map the behavior over time to make sure that you have the time component. And we'll always be using different tools, by the way. So it's in a systems approach, we will never say, oh, I will only be doing behavior over time graphs and that's it. No, because then you only have that view. You need the different views. Iceberg model is something that you often also use if you want to really understand paradigms and the bigger picture of things. In an iceberg model, you will see, okay, the events that are observable are happening above the water. That's the tip of the iceberg. And below the water, there are all the things, the patterns, the structures, and most importantly, and most difficult to uncover, the mental models that are feeding these events, that are all below the water, that you cannot see that easily, but that are very important. Causal loop diagrams, then you put two variables in the system and you try to see how are they influencing each other. If this one goes up, then the other one goes down, or are they reinforcing each other? Are they actually blocking each other? And then connected circles, where you see, okay, all the different players in the field and how are they all connected. So there's many different tools. There's many more than this, just to give you a bit of an idea of what all the things that you can be doing. Often they are linked to visualizing things and looking at things through different lenses is very important, trying to uncover things that are not visible at first. Donella Meadows is someone you will, if you start reading about systems thinking, you will come across Donella Meadows. She is one of the godmothers of it, let's say, and she identified that, or she said, okay, when you're studying a system, you can look at it from 12 different steps or leverage points. You can describe the constants or the parameters of your system, which is the more easy thing to do, let's say, and then you can say, how are they fluctuating, or going up, or are they going down? You might be looking at the buffer zones. So if you have a certain variable in your system, it will have a certain value, but it can also be that you have a certain buffer for it, so that you don't only have, okay, it is set at 5, but we always have a buffer of 10, for example. That could be easily applied to water supplies, for example. Then you have the stocks and the flows. That is how they are influencing each other. And so on. It goes up and up, and it becomes always more and more complicated. And when you reach the highest level, let's say, then you really have at level 3, 2, and 1, you begin to approach like changing the goals of the system or changing the mindsets of the people behind it. And that is really influencing conscious mental models. That is very, very difficult to do. And here I come back a bit to, you saw that we had this in the previous version of this presentation, these 12 steps as well. Where is your innovations, or the innovations that you're working on? Or if you will be applying for funding for GRAPPA, you are trying to solve a challenge. Are you working only on constants and parameters? Or are you really, in order to make your innovation successful, do you really need to change the mindset of the people, of the consumers? If that is needed, that's a very difficult one. Be aware that's not something you just do within a 1-year project, right? It's not necessarily a problem. Sometimes it can be that you have a really long-term goal, but you get there in steps, right? And within this project, you will reach a certain, take some steps to reach that final goal, but you might not reach it immediately. Okay, if you have this long-term plan, that's fine, but it's really important to be aware of it. That if mindset change is needed, that you know where you're dealing with, and then you also need to have the funding and access to a certain type of people to make that possible. So in a perfect, or in the more ideal situation, the SIRL tool that we have developed works best if you're a bit, let's say, in the middle. If you're somewhere, if you're trying to work on the informational patterns or behavior or the social system structure, in that middle zone there, and that's what we try to put out here, there it's easier, there the SIRL tool works best. Because if you're really trying to solve these really big world problems, and changing mindsets, yeah, that's so daunting, that's so challenging, that the SIRL tool might be not complicated enough, let's say, that it might not be extended enough. If you're only working to change a simple parameter, then it's not really systemic innovation that you're working on, and then you might not, the SIRL tool is not strictly speaking needed. It might just make it overly complicated for your project. So it's good to put your project and your challenge and map it out. Try to understand where exactly am I playing at. That will help you a lot to make sure that the SIRL tool, to assess whether or not the SIRL tool is something for your project, yes or no. And also, depending on where you're working on the system, you will have different types of tools that you'll be using typically. However, that is not very strict. It's just you can often apply them in many points. So they're all tools in your toolbox. The more you have, the better. Okay, so that's already quite some theory. Slowly, we will start moving into a bit of more action, let's say. Not just me talking, but you also working. So we wanted to start with an actor mapping. Well, the Systemic Innovation Readiness Level Assessment tool, the SIRL, was developed for groups of people, right? If you're alone, you cannot really do a systemic innovation. That's really, really hard because you need different viewpoints and different expertise. And one person alone can never have all the expertise to make this work. We really think it's better that you do this as a group, and within the group try to act as if you are a team working on this same societal challenge, and you're trying to solve it. And you solve it using the tool, the SIRL tool, and we will guide you through the process of then mapping it out. Okay, so only now I will actually start. You've now normally brainstormed on, okay, this is the problem that we want to solve. For example, we want to find a solution for this peak of tomatoes. What kind of actors do we need if we want to work on this? Okay, we might need the producers, the farmers. We need to include someone who's going to be processing these tomatoes. We need to have some customers at the end of the day. Who might be the customers? Who are we going to sell through? Will there be through retail? Do we need contacts with retailers? How are we going to sell through another channel? So all those kind of discussions are like, who is needed to make this successful? That was the exercise that you should have been doing. It's not overly complicated, but the goal behind it, if you do this with your projects that are submitting for GAPA funding, and I hope that you will be doing then this exercise with them, then the goal is that this will make them think like, oh, indeed, if it's a company submitting for funding, we have technical expertise and we have this expertise, but actually we don't have anyone for legal. And let's say that they're developing a new product and the novel food regulation it has impact, then they might need some legal expertise, right? And then maybe through the funding or through another way, they might get that expertise on board in the team or as an external. But the goal is to make you think, okay, whom do I need to have in my team to make this, to be able to work on this kind of solution? That was the goal of the exercise. Now I'll guide you through how the tool works. So there are 5 different stages. So you remember that the technological readiness level assessment tools before from NASA, they had 9 steps, which is a lot. and we made it a bit more simple to make sure that we could kind of fit it into something that is still that gives you a bit of an overview still. So we made 5 stages. You start with emergence, and it's important that you really understand very well what is the difference between different stages. Of course, it is not that big a problem if it's just if you are missing between 1 or 2 levels, but do important that you have some kind of feeling of what we mean with each of these levels. So I will walk through them in a bit more detail with you. Emergence is just the idea. So at this moment in the tomato case, soup doesn't exist yet. Nobody has ever cooked soup yet, right? There has been no testing. There has been no, not at all. There is just an idea. It's like, hey, we have this surplus of tomatoes. What if we turn them into soup? How could that possibly work? And it needs to be more than just one person having an idea. It needs to be a bit of a team. It needs to be someone with an idea, and also already some partners that say, hey, that's interesting. I'm ready to invest in this, and not I'm like, here's a bag of money and I'll pay whatever it takes to make this a profitable product. But here is a little bag of money for you to test this, to get some tomatoes and to start cooking with them and to start experimenting. So that's the emergence phase. You have an idea and you have some basic funding to take it to the next step to do some first testing. That's emergence. Development. That is when you start making a soup for the first time, but you're not making soup in a factory yet. You are just gonna find some chef that you know, someone you know, or someone that you pay, doesn't matter, and you give them some tomatoes and like, hey, I want to make something with this that has a longer shelf life. It's tasty. I don't know. Could it be a sauce? Could it be a soup? Should we add spices? So you're going to do your first testing. It's going to be in a controlled environment, and it's going to be on a very small scale. And at the end of this stage, you have a proof of concept. You have like, hey, this is a delicious, nice soup that we have cooked up here. And you also have the funding to take it to the next stage, which is the calibration stage. Okay. What do you do in calibration? Here you start testing kind of different recipes. You're still gonna, so you start with a controlled environment. And at the end of this stage, you should have a market viable solution. You should have something that you can actually start selling to customers, because in the development phase, the output is a soup made in your kitchen. That is not something you can sell to customers, right? That's something that you can give to people to taste it, to people that you know, but you cannot actually commercialize it. In calibration, at the end of the calibration stage, you have something that you can actually commercialize. Then in the next stage, bloom. I really like the phrasing or the word that we use here. It's really when the little buds are starting to open up, and actually the solution is starting to take off. Right? It's in the real world. We're no longer in a controlled environment. It's just going to customers, the first customers. It's not yet at the beginning of this stage is not yet necessarily very profitable, but by the end of this stage, it is. It's actually a solution that can live on its own. It's adaptable. It has the market potential, and it can reach a critical mass to make it something that can live on its own. Once you've reached, and then you go into acceptance phase. The start of acceptance, of course, the end of the bloom phase. That's kind of obvious, but at the end of this stage, it is a solution that is replicated in other contexts, and it's not only applied to soup, but also to other projects, to other products, and it is something that starts really living on its. And you are not doing anything. It's like the new normal. Everybody's eating soup, right? It's where we are today. It's when an innovation has been completely taken up by society and it has become normal. That's the end of the acceptance phase. At the beginning of it, of that stage, of course, you have a good user base and you have a critical mass, and it's already living on its own, but it's not yet that completely integrated. So it's somewhere at the beginning of that. Okay, so those are the stages. I always find this the most challenging part to explain. So I want to take 1 second here. Are there any questions? Is this more or less clear? Good. Then we have a matrix, as you already noticed when you opened the tool, and the matrix has has two axes, of course. One axis is the different steps as we just went through them, and the other axis are the innovation dimensions. And also here, okay, there might be evident, but still I want to take a little bit of time to explain how we interpreted them. And as you can see, there is also a custom dimension, so you can always add one if you need it. I would say that in the Zero project, we at first gave the projects the freedom to identify or describe the dimensions as they saw fit themselves. And we noticed that that was too complicated. So that's why we defined them, but we wanted to give you some freedom, and that's why we added the custom dimension. So what is technology? Everything. What is all part of the technology of a diamond is yeah, of course, the production process, the product itself, the packaging, all that is technology. What is behavioral? That is about, okay, are people willing to eat this soup? Are farmers willing to sell us this surplus of tomatoes? Is it accepted by not only by consumers, but also by everybody else in that chain? We had some projects, some of the projects within the Zero project, where it was a new way of working within a factory, for example, a way that would reduce food waste, but it would impact jobs, and it was to be more automation, and it meant potentially people losing jobs. So that's also behavioral dimension. So the behavioral dimension is not only about consumers, it is everybody who is impacted in the chain, everybody who needs to change their behavior, and that's often more people than you think. That's all part of this behavioral dimension. Then governance. So that's everything that is related with the government could be in this dimension. So it's both about policy development, but also about qualifications, food safety labels, existing legislation. But sometimes you might feel like, okay, there's actually a new legislation needed to make this acceptable. Like there was a new way of processing animal byproducts. But yeah, of course, there's very strong regulations there. So then you need to take into account these things and make sure that you have your knowledge on that. Business dimension, I think that's the most easy one to understand, especially as you will be working with businesses. That has to do indeed with, will there be a market for this product? Can I sell it to someone? Can I sell it at a good price? And can I make a profit out of it? Is this financially viable? That's all part of your business dimension. Organizational dimension is the whole supply chain within and outside of the company that is, or organization that is launching the solution. So it is both if within the company there will be organizational changes if a new product is installed, a new production line needs to be there, but also the new distribution channels, the new partnerships, new relationships. Imagine that you had a waste stream out of your production and you want to now use it within your company to make something still a valuable product out of it. And before you would be selling that to the waste company, well, then the waste company now no longer is collecting this, so that has an impact on them. What will be the further impact within their chain? So that's the whole organizational dimension. And then in some cases, you might find that these 5 dimensions are not enough, that there is something very specific to your product, to your project and your solution that you feel is not fitting very well within any of the other dimensions, or maybe it is overlapping somehow. That's all fine. You can always add 1 or even more if you really want to, but I wouldn't recommend because it might make things complicated. You can make a custom dimension. So you can say, in the case of the tomatoes, you could say, hey, we have this very important impact, which is seasonality. It's very specific. You could put it under the technological because it's part of production. But because we find it so important to have a good focus on it, we put it in a separate custom dimension. Now the tool itself. So some of you already saw what we have to come through is this matrix where you have the different stages on top, where you have the different dimensions in the rows. And what is now the very simple idea behind the SIRL tool is that for each and every cell in this matrix, you would identify at least 2 KPIs that are related to that stage and to that dimension. You have to define them yourself because it is really not possible to define these KPIs for all potential projects, and they are too diverse and too different, so that would make no sense at all. But we did give, if you start making a new project in the tool, then you will notice that you get suggestions for KPIs, because we do want to give as many suggestions as possible. And we can actually adapt these suggestions. So the idea is that, and we'll come back to it at the end of this morning, that for the Grappa project, you would have KPIs that are tailored a bit more to the Grappa context, and that is absolutely possible. You could think of, if you stay within a certain context, then of course you can tailor the KPIs already a bit, make them as so that you only have to fill in some gaps. For example, in the technological dimension for emergence, you could say, okay, we need a proof of concept needs to be shared with our stakeholders and accepted, for example. You could make that more specific, but that would already be a bit something. For behavioral dimension, you could say, okay, we need to know what are the end users' needs. In the case of the soup example, you would say, okay, we need to know what taste preferences people have, how thick soup should be, those kind of things we need to kind of understand. In the governance dimension, we need to at least know what obstacles or policy, what are all the regulations that we need to apply, confirm to. Do we need novel food regulation? Yes or no? How is that working? So to understand at least what your challenge is. And in the business dimension, we say, okay, at this point, I need to be able to have funding to go to the next stage. And this is how, just the examples of the KPIs that you can put in there. This is the most of the work. That is really, it takes time. You need to do that with a multidisciplinary team. You need to take the time to really work and develop this KPI chart, adapt it very well to your project, and then it will guide you through the rest of the innovation process. So, but doing this is, of course, it takes some time, and that takes most time at the start of the project. And so more or less, how does it work? First of all, you need to gather the right group of stakeholders. So you have your idea. The idea, the little light bulb is already there. The idea is there. It's not yet completely fine-tuned, but the rough idea is there. And you gather the people that you need to be working on this idea. You set up this workshop to understand very well what the problem is, or what the challenge, what your solution is, and what problem you're trying to solve. You try to put it into these dimensions, and then you set up the KPIs for each of the of the cells in your matrix. You go create the KPI chart. Once you have that done, then you enter into these cycles of evaluating your projects along each of these KPIs. And you can do that with whatever frequency that is most suited to your project, to your timing, and to the funding that you have, of course. You have 1 year, I believe. So, but it is recommendable to do at least 3 of these cycles, right? So that you would have one at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Because if you only have 2, then you only have a beginning and an end, and then the tool will not help you to steer your actions in any way. Then it will just be a reporting tool, which is fine, but it's less useful for you. So I would really recommend to have these 3 measurement moments. And in each of the measurement moments, you go through all of the KPIs that are not done yet, and that are in for each dimensions, the ones that are at that moment the first ones to tackle, and then you will move to the next dimension, and so on. So you can, for each of the KPIs, you will indicate, okay, we've done them, we haven't done it, we are working on it, what are we? You can put some notes in it. You can discuss, and that's actually the most important thing. So the tool pops up, it gives you the KPIs that you have identified yourself. You are there with a multidisciplinary team. You say, oh, yeah, right, we said we had to do this, but we haven't finished it yet. We have taken these actions, we're working on that. This is helping us to solve it, but we actually came across this obstacle. And that is the discussion we actually want you to have. You will also notice, like, oh, wow, the technology is moving ahead very far, but we are lacking behind in our business dimension. Okay, then we need to put more effort into that. How can we redirect our funds so that we can focus a bit more on that? So you might adapt your innovation strategy based on the discussion that you have. And that's key. If you only do this to just tick off the boxes, then and you're not adapting anything, then something is very definitely wrong. It's impossible. I have never heard of a project where you have this great idea, this innovation, you set up a plan at the start, you never change the plan, you just execute it, and then you have a successful innovation. Not one single example comes to my mind. If you have any, please send it to me because I've never heard of it. So it is really important that you have this discussion and these adaptations as you go along. And of course, whenever you do achieve your goals, you should celebrate. That is very evident. Celebrating is very important because it's hard work, all of this. And here you see a little screenshot already of how the project, the tool is set up. The project guide, you probably have already seen it. You will be all creating your projects in a minute, and the tool is set up in such a way that it guides you through this. So first, indeed, create your project. Then you can verify the dimensions. You can add dimensions if you want them, or you can re-describe them as well. You have all the freedom that you want there. Public settings refers to whether you want to share your project with us. So if you put data in there and you are willing to share that with us, then that's very useful for us. The tool is free, so we do appreciate data in return, but we don't force you. So of course, you're absolutely free to keep it private as well if that is needed. So in that case, make sure to turn that off. For now, I would guide you to, I would only put in testing data in the tool, let's say, because it's still a testing platform. It's not yet on the ILVO servers, so it's not yet 100% according to our security and data policies. So only once it's a completely verified tool, then you can actually start using this option to share it with us. Then once you've done that, you can invite critical stakeholders. So you then decide who to share your project with, who can see it, and who you want to be working with. Then you can, and then it will guide you to get the KPIs and setting the end goals. But I'll come back to that. Some tips and tricks along this project, along all this process. Okay, so be aware that indeed the setup workshops, it takes some time to co-create this KPI chart. Is it normal that you sometimes need to adjust the KPI chart? Yes, that happens. But try to be very critical when you do. Don't do it all the time, adapting your KPI chart. Should you, how often should you plan these meetings? Well, it's going to need at least 1 hour every 6 months to a year. That's the minimum. In your case, I would say indeed maybe 1 to 2 hours every 3 to 4 months. That would be a rhythm that sounds acceptable. When you are reporting the progress, be honest. It's a tool that's meant there for you to support you, and it will only work if you're being very honest. If it's, and people are often very tempted to, they want to check boxes and say, yeah, we've done it, but be very critical for yourself. It's not working if you already check it and then you don't come back to it, but actually there is still something to do. As long as it's not completely finished, leave it open and keep it for next time. Put in a note, tell what you've been doing, and that's fine. Things take time. Systemic innovation takes time. Then during the discussion part, it's what is important here is that here you will get the discussion across dimensions, right? Because dimensions are, of course, also interacting with each other, and be very, very mindful to look at those dimensions that are lagging behind, and discuss those on how to adapt, how to tackle that. And if you feel that you're missing expertise, make sure that you invite new partners along the way. It's normal that at the start of an innovation, you will need maybe more for the technical setup, while later in the process, you will need much more of the business people to be involved to really get the markets up and running. So yeah, it's very normal, and get outside expertise as well whenever you do feel that you need it. That's what we've learned so far. You've already all done this, so you're already in the account. You can invite your team members, but you can also just share your screen and work like that. So that is also set up. What is now? So I just wanted to show you a bit how it looks, what it looks like in the tool. So at the right-hand side, where you have this little booklet, when you click on the booklet, that's when you get the project guide. The project was you can create the project first of all, but that's what was done in the previous step. So as soon as the project is created, you will be asked to verify your dimensions. You can see that the standard names are already here. You can simply confirm. You can simply scroll down and confirm it. Or you can say, hey, no, I want to make this customized to my solution, or I want to add a dimension. That is however you like it to be. Then the public settings, like I said, if you want to make it public, then you allow us access to share the data. So for now, I would say turn that off, but do just share the link with those people that you want to share it with, or like this, add project members. That's another way of doing it. And then finally, that's not for now, but I already will indicate it. You are able to make exports from the tool as well. So that's very useful, but I'll get back to that at the end of the next day. Then when you have all that basic setup done, next thing to do is to start adding the KPIs. And you always have a KPI title and a small description. And like you see here, you have suggestions. So in every time where you click on the cell, you get this add new KPI. You type this in, and you will have some suggestions of what KPIs could be useful for the technology dimension in the emergence phase. So we try to guide you as much as possible to through using the tool. Okay, so now I'm going to have a quick look at my timing. We have a little bit more time. I would ask all the groups to go back into their breakouts and to do this basic setup of the tool. And to also start thinking already about what is your you would say, okay, should we start at the beginning? But no, I would invite you to start with thinking at the end, and to cast your mind into the future, and to really think about what is actually once the solution that you're working on is implemented, what would society look like? What would that mean? So what is acceptance for each of the dimensions of your solution? Can you start with defining the acceptance stage? So try to really imagine, once this solution has been adopted by the market, what would that look like? That is the exercise. Just a quick recap. So once it's accepted, it really means that it's almost not an innovation anymore. When the acceptance phase is finished, it is something that lives on its own. It's something that's been accepted by society, and it's no longer actually needing the innovation support process. It's a competitive alternative to the current status quo at that moment. The users are just self-propelling, and it's having a certain momentum on its own. So there will be competitors, of course, but you have developed a solution that is standing next to the current existing solutions. That is the acceptance phase.